Alright, well, there's only a few of us, but we might as well get going.
There's
Jack's arrived. Just in time, Jack. Anyone got anything specific they want to talk about before we jump into pull requests?
no squash PRs.
Alright, from the top. 1584, anyone? I like this one.
Yeah, I was trying to understand what a meta class was, and I decided I didn't have time to try to figure it out.
What the heck is a meta class?
So when you, I was reading about this, let's see whether I can do a half decent job of explaining it. Probably not. So when you define a class, not an instance, but a class is an object in Python, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a class, not an instance, but the class is actually an instance of type.
Object.
So a meta class is the class that is instantiated when you define the class, as opposed to a class which is instantiated when you define when you create an instance, I think. Basically, it controls how the class is defined and what happens when the class is defined, which allows you to do stuff upon definition of a class, which in this case, upon the class being defined, it registers it with the map factory. But I think that's right. I think when you define a class, it creates an instance of the built-in Python object type. And when you create a meta class, you subclass type and define and set and change the class's meta class, and then when you define the class, it instantiates from your subclass of type rather than type itself, I think.
Yeah, I've tried to read the Stack Overflow description and it just blew my brain. So you're not helping, Stuart.
Basically, without getting into too much technicality, what it does is that when you define the class, it executes that code one way or another. So when you define the class, it registers it with the map factory upon definition. So when you import the class, it does the registration for you.
So how is this different from subclassing? Right. This is like
the code is executed upon definition of the class, not creation of an object. Literally, when you type class, like it's like if you were doing it in an IPython interpreter and you typed class, my class, open brackets, object, close, colon, pass, right? You've defined a class, and that is when the meta class is run, not when you create an instance of my class.
So what's the advantage besides sort of like simpler code?
Basically, the advantage is you no longer have to manually register the subclasses of map with the map factory. It does it for you. That's the whole advantage, the whole point of it.
Because when you define all these classes, it automatically runs the code so the map factory will know they exist?
Yes. So basically, when you import map.sources, which in itself imports all of the classes from the different files inside the sources directory, it does the registration as it adds each one to the interpreter. I ninja'd this idea and this code out of AstroPy. It's something they use in a couple of places in AstroPy.
What do they use it for?
Registration of time formats, amongst other things.
There's this generic map meta. That's the meta class.
Yes. What that does is define how the class is defined. It's all very meta. It's hurting my head now. It's just. I think it's like the class itself is an instance of an object in Python, because everything is an object, so everything is an instance of object. But specifically, the class is the instance of type, is an instance of type.
But the class definition is already itself an instance.
Yes, but not of itself, of a class called type, which is its meta class.
When that instance, that class definition is created, you can run code at the same time at that time.
Well, so what I've done is effectively subclass type, although it's actually ABC meta, but don't worry about that for the moment. I've subclass type and set the meta class on generic map to be my subclass of type. So now when you define generic map or a subclass thereof, it is creating an instance of generic map meta, not type.
And so this will be true if someone creates their own subclass of generic map through any means, not inside the SunPy library or anything, but as long as a subclass generic map, it should automatically register.
Yes, as long as they have a method called is_datasource4, because that's what it checks for in the meta class. So if it's a subclass of generic map and it has the magic method that the map factory understands, then it will automatically register it.
How is it? I don't understand how that works. Seems like magic.
It is a form of magic.
It is pretty much witchcraft. It is quite conceptually difficult. I'm not entirely convinced I fully understand the whole concept.
Subclass for generic map, they have to add that method, otherwise it won't work.
Well, otherwise it won't register.
It won't register.
Right.
It's still a valid.
It's looking for
that. It
that.
just won't automatically register. So you can still manually register it if for some reason you want to call your method something else. You can still run map, as in factory capital M map dot register my class, my method, which is the old way of doing it. There's nothing stopping you from still doing that. It's just things that subclasses of generic map with the right method now automatically register upon definition.
Okay, what is ABC and ABC meta?
ABC is a module called abstract base classes. I don't really know what that does, but because of the way that ND data is defined inside AstroPy, I had to subclass from ABC meta rather than type, or else it wouldn't work.
Okay.
Because generic map is a subclass of ND data, which already has its meta class as ABC meta.
Oh, okay. So, wait, so you're saying, but then so our generic map has multiple meta classes associated with it?
Only has... No, it's just that when you subclass something with a meta class, the meta class has to be a subclass of that thing's meta class. Basically, you can't change the meta class halfway down the class hierarchy unless you're also changing it to a subclass of the same thing that's higher up the hierarchy.
Wait, but does ND data already have a meta class associated with it?
Yes.
But it doesn't do anything?
What the meta class for ND data does is enforce it having certain methods and properties. It's like an abstract class or a template. A template in C++? I can't remember. Like it defines like you can't define a class without it having certain properties.
Sure.
I don't know about that. I haven't done the reading on that one. But basically, they just use it to force every subclass of ND data to define the very minimum API.
Okay, do we still have that, or does this overwrite that, or what happens?
That's true, actually. That might override that. Maybe I need to subclass from the ND data meta class.
Oh my god.
Oh yes, that's probably true. Good catch. I approve. Okay, I should probably do that, I think. Oh god, this is complicated. The end result is so damn simple. It's just using so much witchcraft under the hood that it's difficult to keep track of exactly what's going on.
Okay. Well, it's a little bit more work, but it sounds interesting.
I was just quickly reading the doc that you wrote. So at the top you say, this makes it straightforward to define your own generic map subclass. They do not need to be part of SunPy for this to work. That's kind of a confusing sentence.
I just mean it doesn't have to be in SunPy for it to work. Like, you can just define your own class in your own script.
Yeah, I know what you're trying to say, but I think you should rejigger that sentence to say something like, this allows you to define your own maps, which are not necessarily included in SunPy, or something like that, which are not in the SunPy library. It allows you to extend the SunPy library, or something like that, on the fly. Something a little bit clearer.
If you want to suggest wording on the pull request, I'll change it. It's cool.
Okay. But then here you say, is data source 4, which you just said is required. Now you can say you can do it without it?
Yes, if you do it without it, you have to manually register the class.
I see. Okay, so there I would say, wait, if you're not subclassing from generic map, but you're just explaining how to subclass generic map. So why would you say if you're not subclassing from generic
Well, yeah,
map?
that's the other thing. So you can theoretically register any class with map factory. So if for some completely ridiculous reason you didn't actually want to subclass from generic map, you could still register it with map factory, as long as it shared enough of the API that it looked like generic map from map factory. I could take that bit out of the documentation. I just put it there for the completeness.
Yeah, because that suggests that people. But what would you gain if you were to like, okay, I've created a string object. I want to register it with the generic map. What? That would be allowed?
Well, yes, it would, but it wouldn't work unless the initializer of the class shared the API with generic map, i.e. it takes data and meta as two arguments to init.
Okay. Okay, well that should be defined. And so why, and this is a larger question, sort of where I think going beyond the scope of this PR, but why do we want to have is data source 4 be sort of our signature for generic map, right? It would be very easy for somebody to come up with examples where you want to define some sort of map that doesn't read in from a file, right? That well, I guess we give it all kind. It needs data in it.
All that is data source 4 takes is the data array and the metadata object. Now it's completely irrelevant of where that comes from. It's just taking a ordered dictionary or subclass thereof and a NumPy array. And from those two things, determining whether it is the correct subclass to pass those two inputs. So it is data source independent. It doesn't matter where it's coming from.
But if you could imagine, and this is, if we don't want to allow this, that's fine as well. But you could imagine somebody, they're running simulations, and they want to define a map that generates its own data, right? Such that you do like map dot, run, map dot simulate, and then it generates its own data. So it does not get initialized with data because it will generate its own data. Is that something that we do not want to allow?
Yes.
Because
it's the same argument that we have with Lightcurve at the moment, and it downloading its own data, right? the data acquisition should be separate from the type. You don't get NumPy arrays that create their own data.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine with me. I just wanted to sort of go through the argument. Okay. Okay, I'll suggest a few changes. I mean, you know, the back end, this seems neat. It does seem to make things easier on the user's side if they want to subclass things.
I also think there's more power here that we should be thinking about how to take advantage of.
Yeah.
Just for this seems a little bit overkill, but nice.
Yeah, nice finding it.
Yeah, I quite like it. I had a fun morning understanding the theory behind it enough to actually do it. It's something that I've been wanting to do for quite a long time, and it was a fun mind-bending exercise actually working out what the hell was going on. But it was good. Okay, we should probably move on.
Yep.
As people may or may not have seen, there's a fair bit of Python 3 stuff been going on.
Yes.
Hard to miss.
Yeah. I'm surprised it's taking so much work. I thought it was going to be easier.
So I'm deliberately doing it in hunks to try and make it easier for other people to contribute, cough cough, and to make it so that we can add stuff in a better sort of not one gigantic thing.
Did you notice, by the way, that I have asked, as part of you're the part of the organizing committee for the, we've just lost Albert, for the whatchamacallit Python and astronomy meeting. I asked for there to be a tutorial on I think it'd be very helpful, because I just have a very vague sense of why we should move to Python 3. You know, besides the obvious, like, well, you know, 2.7 is not going to be supported forever and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to kind of sell it and give everyone some, like, give me and everyone some, like, good examples of, like, why Python 3 is so much better.
There was a blog post recently from somewhere about it. I can't remember. I think I'll see if I can find it.
So where are things with Python 3 stuffs?
Okay, so, well, my main argument, but quickly back to your point, my main argument for Python 3 is that we should just support it because, you know, it's the right thing to do. But I am getting I've managed to get map going, and the supporting modules required to do that. Um, Review on 1583 would be nice. The Travis fail is just Sphinx rolling over and dying.
Well, I mean, the problem with all these Python 3 PRs is that, like, I don't know Python 3, so I don't feel like I can comment as to, you know, what needs to be done and what doesn't.
So I am very much relying on the test suite to make sure that nothing's broken.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm using an automated script called Python Modernize to do a large amount of the grunt work, and then going through the diff myself and making sure that it's not doing anything completely stupid. But I mean, just look at the code. If the code, there's not a huge amount of difference, to be honest, and I'm testing it. So if there's anything majorly wrong with it, it will die on me. Obviously, I expect there to be some Python 3 bugs even when I finished, and hopefully not any Python 2 bugs, although a few may slip through our test suite, of course.
Yeah. I mean, but some of these methods I've never heard, like inspect.isMethod. I've never heard of that.
So that's just ninjaed from, that's like a Stack Overflow post that's in the comment above. Basically all that's doing is checking that it is a class method rather than a normal method, I think, because normal methods are... Yes, normal methods in Python 3 are just functions, whereas class methods are methods. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It works.
And what is this? What does 6 do again?
So 6 is a bunch of helpers that allow you to get at stuff independent of what Python version you're in. So like some of the URL lib stuff has moved. So rather than you manually having to do am I Python 2, if yes, import from here, if Python 3, import from here, 6 just does it all for you. You just import it from 6 and then it always comes in the same place. Does a few other.
But some of these other things are going to break. So that, I understand, that would be good so that you can keep support for 2 and 3, but aren't you breaking things other places? So this is only going to be supporting 3? Like I expect this inspect is method, isn't that only in 3?
No, that's valid to code 2. It's just yes, because it's a class method, that function returns true in both Python 2 and Python 3. It's just the difference is that the second logical statement isn't right in Python. Oh yeah, that's it. If in Python 3, if it's not a class method, that will return false, which is good because the second statement would error in Python 3, whereas if it is a class method, then is method returns true in both 2 and 3, and the second statement will evaluate correctly. It's because they've changed. It's because they've changed methods they've changed some semantic about the way methods are defined internally in Python or something. I don't fully understand. I made it work. I moved on.
Okay. So I guess I can give this a +1, assuming it's passing, which is not.
The fail is the Sphinx build timeout error that I haven't got to the bottom of yet. It seems some pull requests sometimes Sphinx just doesn't start running. It doesn't work. And I haven't been able to pin down why, and also it doesn't seem, if you just restart the same Travis build, it doesn't seem to work. But if you add new commits, sometimes it'll work. I really don't get it. But it's not a bug with the PR. It's just a Travis puke.
Okay. What else? Who is Sarav Singh?
We don't know.
What is this? Was it 1579?
Yes, 1579 is the file from SunPy, but without. But this hasn't actually been implemented. It probably needs some comments on it. Also needs the SunPy license comment at the top. What about my PR, 1566? Yeah, can open worms. All right.
I mean, the can of worms you're referring to, I agree, needs to be fixed. But currently we don't. Your concern is about keeping things synchronized, and currently we don't keep things synchronized anyway. So it's not any better or worse than it has been.
Currently, all methods on map that do something to the data modify the metadata in the correct manner. And when you save the file, that metadata will be correct. Obviously, if the user does something themselves, they have to make sure that that holds. But all our methods like rotate and SOPA-pixel and subpixel and all of that stuff, submap, sorry, all of those do the right thing with the metadata.
Well, if that's true, then I can change it such that it fixes this as well. I mean, that's not difficult.
I suppose my primary technical problem with your PR is the fact that the save to file thing doesn't work properly. And it needs rebasing again. But I'm not convinced that I like it as. I'm not quite convinced that I like the approach as a modification to an in-place map, because it's very much different in comparison to everything else we've done. All the other methods on map don't make an in-place modification to the map. They return a new map with a different something. Like rotate returns a new map. Submap obviously returns a new map. And I know that this is a little different, but I don't know. I haven't given any thought to the fact that this is a change of approach in comparison to what we have at the moment.
Yeah, that's true.
You could have a shift function that returns a new map with different shift, and then you've always got the metadata will always be updated, and it'll behave the same. And if the user doesn't want to keep two maps around, you just assign over the top of it, and you don't lose any memory or anything, because Python's very smart with that kind of stuff. So there's no kind of technical restriction why we shouldn't do it like that.
It's true. It's just from a user perspective, I consider this like you would be fixing something, right? Like, yeah, it's kind of a fix. You'd be looking at comparing two maps and then finding that one is not in the right location, assuming that one is correct, and then adding the shift. And so I would just consider it more appropriate to change it in place. But you're right. We're doing the same thing with rotate, returning a new map. Kind of wonder if that's something we should just talk about some more, see whether we really want to keep doing it that way. I mean, in NumPy as well, it's sort of unclear. It's unclear when NumPy is going to do things in place and when it's not. And so being more consistent than NumPy is better.
I mean, for some stuff like submap, it's very appropriate to always return a copy.
Yeah.
For rotate, I would very much argue it's always appropriate to return a copy, because what you're doing is actually destructive on the data.
Right.
And I agree with you that consistency is important. So because there are those things where it's really important to return a copy all the time, I wonder whether that's like reason enough to stick with it.
Yeah, I mean, I could also see how, here we're not really changing anything, we're just messing with metadata. So creating a whole new map seems like overkill.
But you have to remember that you're not really creating a whole new map. When you do that, all you're really doing is you are creating a whole new map, but what does that map actually contain? All that map is containing is the pointer to the same data, or the same reference to the NumPy array, and a modified dictionary. So all you're actually doing is creating a new dictionary. That's all the extra memory you're taking up anyway.
Yeah, but the user doesn't really know that.
From a user's perspective, all it is it's as easy as doing like m equals m dot shift, right? And then you don't have a new map. You've just modified the one you had in memory anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the old one will just instantly be garbage collected. So it's effectively the same thing. The only difference,
Yeah.
the only flaw I see in this plan is the way you have it at the moment is that once you've performed the shift, the original information and the shift are separate.
Yeah, I mean that's the other advantage
You
of
can
keeping
you
it
can
that
see
way.
the original pointing and the shift, but if you copy the map and
I'm
just
sorry.
modify the metadata, you wouldn't be able to do that.
Sorry, you're breaking up, or maybe my internet connection is
So
breaking up.
I mean, at the moment you've got that distinction between the base and the shift. Whereas if you created a copy where you just modified the original metadata, that disappears, obviously.
Yeah, that's right, and that's something I thought was particularly important.
I don't disagree. I mean, you could, I mean, there are other ways around it. You could still return a copy. You could have, you could add a shift parameter into the metadata and still return a copy. And then when we serialize, we could just add them back together again. We need proper metadata handling. We need to deal with our metadata problem better.
Yeah, I don't think it should stop us from doing things.
No, I don't. In fact, doing things is a very good way to work out what our metadata problem is.
Yeah, exactly.
I
So
think
okay,
I
so
think the
I'll
particular problem we're having here is maintaining history of the changes to the metadata, right?
yeah.
What we want is some kind of versioned history of the metadata as it goes through our pipeline,
Hmm.
which could be done in a metadata object. You could just, every time you change it, you could store previous versions somewhere. Um, I would probably argue that at the moment, if you want this functionality in the correct way of doing it, or the consistent way of doing it, would be to just return a copy and modify the metadata in place. Leave it up to the user to maintain the history themselves, which I appreciate is not the nicest way of doing it. But it is at least more consistent with the other methods on map at the moment.
Yeah, that's fine. I can do that.
Are you still working on that metadata SEP? Because we should probably be making notes of these types of things as we go along and encounter them, so that when we start working on that in earnest, we've got a better spec for it.
Yeah, I have. I mean, I have not been touching it recently. Have I been maintaining notes? Mm. Not so much. But I'll try to remember some of the stuff and add it to the. Have I PR'd it? Yeah, there's a PR, so we can put some of that stuff as comments to it.
Yeah, we should. And I think my main reservation about the whole metadata handling idea at the moment is that it's going to remove an awful lot of code from map, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is something that needs to be considered carefully.
Yeah.
And how we do any unification between map and light curve with the metadata is an interesting question. I think we might end up with a common base and then two distinct subclass trees below or something. Because there's, especially with all the WCS information, there's a lot of stuff to think about there.
Yeah, I agree.
And there's a lot of stuff to think about. Where we go? Link from Jack. There's a lot of stuff to think about if we ever move over to generalized WCS or anything as well.
Yeah. Yeah, do you know where things are on that front?
No, not really. They're a way away. They're a way down the road for us. But it's still, when designing something like the metadata thing, it's something that we should take into account. which basically I think boils down to we're going to need to separate the in-memory representation of the metadata and the serialization of the metadata, because generalized WCS objects, at least for most Solr applications, will be serializable to FITS WCS, but they won't be held in memory like that. Like, we'll read it, if we read in a FITS WCS and create a generalized WCS object as part of the metadata, that will no longer look like, behave like, or have any of the keys of the FITS WCS object that it came from, but it will be convertible back to it. So in some ways, we've kind of abstracted that away already with our properties and stuff. But this is like going another step further, where we're completely abstracting that. It's a good problem. I like it. But there's lots to think about.
Yeah. Hmm. Um. So this entire meeting, we have not accepted a single PR. Can we try to at least accept one?
I think we have accepted the util tests thing, because that fail is just Sphinx. Let me just double check that before I press the magic button. Double check that is just timeout. Unfortunately, with this Sphinx build shafting itself like that, if some build error gets in, we'll have to fix it in a separate test, but yeah, it's just terminated. There's no way around that for the moment until I work out how the hell to fix that non-existent error that I cannot replicate locally at all, not even a little bit.
Great. What about the 1580? Oh, still in progress. Okay.
Which one's that?
Debbie trying to revive coveralls.
Oh yeah, see now that that has been shafted by the online build crashing again for some different, new and exciting reason. Because coveralls only works on the online build at the moment, because that's the one that has the highest test coverage. If the online build fails, so does coveralls, which makes it kind of difficult to test whether coveralls works at all. Ugh, I hate the online test build. I wish it was all offline.
What about 1297?
1297? I'm trawling back a bit there, Steve.
Yeah, well, it's yours.
Oh yeah, so this has a fundamental flaw in it. Man, it's a while since I've looked at this. So, unfortunately, because of the way that the rice compressed AIA and HMI data are stored on disk, they can't actually be memory mapped.
Mm.
So, this doesn't really work. I mean, it does. It does work, but not for the vast majority of data that people would ever want to memory map.
I thought memory mapping was sort of built into the FITS IO stuff.
It is, memory map is built into AstroPy FITS. All this is doing is allowing you to is just passing the argument through, basically, so that you can control it.
Oh, I see.
And yeah, I mean, this doesn't work exactly as it is at the moment. I can't quite remember why.
So should it be closed?
No, I should really fix it. But the thing is, I don't think we're ever going to make it work for AIA an HMI write compressed data. I just don't think it's ever going to work. Oh, okay. This fail is HelioViewer shafting itself, including in the offline build. Why is HelioViewer shafting itself on the offline build? That goes back to that other pull request. We really need to have a way to force the offline build to be offline so that it errors if it tries to access the internet. Allow me to kick this build up to the bottom. I have too many remotes on my repo. Has anyone had a chance to look at the Unified Downloader PR? Because that's like our condition for 0.7 and it's had basically no work done on it at the moment.
No, I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, personally.
Okay, I've rebased 1297 in an attempt to make it run continuous integration. Good goodness. Right, anything else anyone wants to discuss, talk about, merge?
I think it's just you and me. I don't know that Jack has said anything.
Yeah, I felt you guys were, getting on with stuff, so...
You know what else we should merge is like 1319. It's been sitting there for months.
Uh, 1319. Oh. This should be easy. Let's see. Yeah, +1.
It unfortunately needs rebasing before it can be merged.
Ugh. Yeah, I haven't heard from Dan in a while. So is this a new requirement? You want things to be rebased?
Well,
Or
this needs to be updated because it cannot be merged. There's a conflict. So.
No, sorry, you're right. I misread that. Yeah. Well, maybe I'll be good and I'll actually get something done and rebase this.
I agree. I claim this bell to be the end bell.
Yeah. Oh.
So, alright, well, thanks everyone.
Oh,
Okay. Thanks.